Okay, our next reader is, where? Oh, there he is, okay. Edward Herdrich. He graduated from the University of Illinois at Chicago with a double major in English, creative writing, and criminal justice. Although his professional career as a licensed private detective for the last 20 years has followed one side of his degree, he has always been writing. He is the published author of several nonfiction works, a book on private investigation utilized by Elgin Community College, Harper College, and McHenry County College for a course in training private investigators, and has had some poetry published. He was a member of the United States Army Military Police Corps, honorably discharged, he adds. These life experiences, as well as his experiences with friends in the Lakota and Cherokee communities, helped to influence and shape his writing. Ed, come on up, please.
Good evening, thank you. I'd like to thank Ann and Kevin and everybody at Waterline for having Waterline available for these opportunities. This is my first time reading, so I'm nervous. Franchise operation is just a vignette short story, so it doesn't really need much of an introduction, thankfully. Franchise operation. Billy pushed aside the straw-like packing material as he could see so he could see the contents of the mid-sized crate. He grabbed a piece of the brown wax-covered paper covering one of the units and pulled it off. For a moment, he was motionless. He was taken back to his first training experience with an MP5 as a member of the Military Police Special Reactions Team. When he had finished the pop-up target course he normally completed with an M16, he felt an indescribable sense of confidence in something else. Perhaps something to do with knowing not everyone got to fire the more exotic weapon. The MP5 was considered state-of-the-art with respect to machine pistols. It fired hundreds of rounds quickly and smoothly without jarring recoil, and unlike the many versions of AR-15s or M16s, it didn't jam every third round. He was surprised to see them here in Iran, much less in the wooden crate with anything other than foam surrounding them. Normally, weapons like this were wrapped in plastic tightly, and then spray foam was applied. He looked at the three other crates that were about the same size, and then over at the smaller square crate. He looked up, hoping that Tim would be able to explain the unusual packing. For some reason, Tim was not at his desk. Billy looked and listened. The small fraction of the abandoned warehouse that they occupied was relatively well insulated from outside noise. Even in the worn-down, seemingly abandoned areas of Iran, there was always a lot of foot traffic and horns honking. Billy heard Tim's footfalls in the hallway before the office door opened. Tim, should I worry about the fact these look like they're packed secondhand? That would not be something to worry about. Unlike the service, we are not representatives of, nor do we reflect on the company. Okay, Billy sighed at hearing the familiar legalese-sounding expression, but still not sure what it meant. He turned and reached for the clipboard with the paperwork. The company. Why did so many people use euphemistic terms? Central Intelligence Agency was a mouthful, and CIA was not something to throw around when you were on the street. But even in closed offices, in closed quarters, people seemed reluctant to say anything other than the company or Central or the agency. Billy, hurry up and check through the rest of those crates, Tim said, and stepped past Billy. He sat down at his desk, crushing his cigarette out in the ashtray. He immediately took another one out of the pack, lit it, and closed the manila file folder. We have to put a rush on this now. Outside vendors got this to Central late. But orders from Central are just as likely to be screwed up as the ones coming from outside vendors. We have to get these out. Jesus, you'd think that kind of shit wouldn't happen, Billy said, pushing down on the crowbar to pry open the box. You'd like to think, but good thing, as much as headquarters is sometimes out of touch, teaching people Punjabi who are going to be in a province which speaks Sindhi, once we're here, we customize our operations to our needs and those of the local market. But, Billy started to say, but then thought better of it. Some things he thought will probably come with time, like why, despite having top-of-the-line computers, were almost all their paperwork handwritten? or pick an old site like this to wire for infrared and motion. Billy turned back to the crates. He pried the top of the next crate open and slid it off. He looked over at Tim, seated at his desk, sorting files to be destroyed, smoking away. Sitting at the old metal desk on the rickety wooden chair, faded paint on the walls and most of the woodwork all around him, Tim looked like something out of the 50s. He didn't look to be more than 5 or maybe 10 years older and had only been at the company for 7 years. His coffee cup, which sometimes carried the faint aroma of Glenlivet, was stationed next to the ashtray, inseparable companions. Billy had gotten out of the service just a few months ago and started working with the company right away. Yeah, you'll get used to it. Always makes me laugh when the Crusaders talk about government being run more like a business. Hell, we got the best PR and marketing platform in the world. Right, Billy replied. As he looked through, counting, part of Tim's comments suddenly registered. Crusaders? It seemed odd, but Tim and other people at the company sometimes referred to the people who supported their operations as Crusaders. But then he remembered at orientation a couple of months ago, he had heard one of the instructors talking to one of the human resources people, joking about a senator who had advocated for allowing the expansion of the company referred to as a Crusader. Maybe they just meant the rhetoric. Check that next box, Billy. Make sure the units match the paperwork. We have to get these out right away. They roll up the streets early in Markazi. On it, Billy said, smiling. Rolling up the streets was such a stateside expression. But then Billy thought, the fact the company had operations growing in the Middle East probably meant more stateside influence would be coming over too. Maybe they wouldn't have to work out of these broken down buildings. He pried the top off the crate and counted the items. 75. The paperwork called for only 50. Hey, Tim, Billy called. We got over in the second box. Fucking Christ, Tim said, taking a cigarette out of the dark blue-colored pack and lighting it as he stood up. Right there. Billy looked at the units. Despite the odd packing, they looked like the manufacturer's ad copy. Shiny black metal, the red and white markings near the trigger guard and safety cleanly visible, and the little bit of grease that was used to maintain the condition of the parts had not marred the smooth, silky look of the metal. Hey, Billy, Tim said, slipping the pack of cigarettes in his pocket. The way you're looking at those, you'll be getting a Woody any minute. Let me see the paperwork. So, Tim, I have to ask, why do you smoke that brand anyways? Not like that pizza from Domino's was organic. Cute, Billy, cute. Yeah, well, not like Domino's is quite the same in Iran anyways. They're pure tobacco, no bullshit chemicals. If I get cancer, it'll be organic cancer. Right, Billy said, not sure how to take the comment, which was followed by a wide grin. He watched as Tim looked back and forth from the paperwork to the contents of the crate. When Billy had finished his tour of duty, the transition from the service to the company had been fairly smooth. Like a lot of people he had met over the last few months, Tim talked about details, about quotas and customers, not missions. Billy couldn't help but wonder if people at the company had a real sense of mission. Billy, look at the paperwork and then look at what's in the crate. What? Billy replied, taking the paperwork from Tim and looking it over quickly. 50 items. There's 75 in the crate. Okay, Billy, refresh my memory. What was your unit? 796 Military Police Battalion. Why, what's that got to do with MP? 95 Bravo? Geez, who screwed that up? This is no place for a do-gooder. Damn it. Billy looked at Tim, who was looking at him, but staring right past him. It was almost as if Tim didn't remember that he was standing right there in front of him. There was a moment of awkward silence, and Billy wasn't sure if he should say anything. If a master sergeant or top were venting frustration, you stood there and waited. This was different, but Tim was still his immediate supervisor. Okay, Billy, here's the thing. The numbers are screwed up on the paperwork. The sheets read 2 different numbers. No big surprise. We make note of it and send the shipment out. But do these look like Kalashnikovs to you? Imagine if we sent that box of smokers to someone who was expecting to toss frags to blow up a machine gun point. Not good. If Omaha Steak sends T-bones to the person expecting fillets, not good. Does it happen? Shit, yes. See, we're more like quality control. We make sure each operation has the right merchandise for their location. Different locations, different considerations. Basic business franchise practices. But, Billy said, wondering who would make a decision to take one over the other, they're not even close to comparable. Nope, but you don't send top-line merchandise to Walmart stores. Kalashnikovs go to insurgents, not freedom fighters. You have to pay attention to detail, Billy. Now close it up and find the box with the Kalashnikovs. We have to get those out with the smokers in about 10 minutes. We stay on top because we help people see what they need before they realize it, and then we get it for them. They'll be ready, Billy replied, watching as Tim walked back to his desk. Although it seemed as if they were working on their own, he was glad to be working for Tim. Billy knew it was hard to trust people at the company, but Tim put things simply and directly, and his explanations seemed relatively sensible given the nature of their business. He looked at the clock and couldn't help wonder how many other branch offices worked under the same limitations. As Tim had said, the outside vendors and Central both seemed capable of the occasional oops. That didn't stop the demand, though. Good to go, Billy. What? Yeah, all squared away, Billy replied, looking up at Tim, surprised that Tim had been able to get close to him without his noticing. Good job. Now get out of here. I'll get the rest of it straightened out. You sure? Billy asked, not accustomed to leaving a supervisor to do cleanup. Definitely true. Go get some dinner. Maybe have a little fun. Stay away from that Blackwater Bistro, though. Has a nasty reputation. Roger that, boss, Billy replied, starting a salute and then stopping. He had been saluting for 6 years and only a civilian employee for 3 months now. Tim had already turned away from him and was walking toward the other boxes that needed to be straightened out and put together for shipment. The moment of tension had passed, and Billy thought, it really was more like working at the warehouse before he entered the service than it was like the time he had been on active duty. A little odd, but good. As he shut the door on the way out, Billy wondered if Tim had been serious about possible stateside locations having openings. He took a last look at Tim at his desk and started walking down the busy, dusty road, the sounds of children shouting in Tagalog as familiar as the orders barked in Punjabi by soldiers.
Thank you.